There's more to ease. Financial district home office. Now that's it.
Baby, if you've ever wondered what became of Joe and me. We're living on the air at Carnival Personnel. Carnival Personal Podcast, CPP. Listen to Jacques and coherent yapping while Joe can quote a movie line by line. They may have no idea what they're talking about, but all in all they still sound pretty fine. It's Carnival Personnel, the CP Podcast.
You can see our next guest whenever he feels like it at the Comedy Studio in Cambridge, making his television debut. Please welcome Casey Crawford.
How you guys doing? I'm so lonely. Anybody else lonely? Just me? I'm so lonely. The other night I was downtown talking to a homeless guy, and he was like, well, I gotta go. I like to have fun. You guys like to have fun? I like to have fun. Last Halloween, I went as the guy whose wallet I found.
Hello, welcome to Carnival Personnel Sideshow. I'm Jacques.
I'm Joe.
And Joe.
Casey.
Hey, right to it.
Right to it. No introduction. The fourth wall has already come down. So we are doing this sideshow with Casey Crawford, the co-champion of the 2024 Boston Comedy Festival, the 24th anniversary or annual 24th annual. 2024
or 24th, because maybe they skipped one year because anyway.
No, they did it online. But anyways, we have the co-champion Casey Crawford, and it's funny. I was going to say in the introduction, my introduction to Casey was kind of interesting. It was, I'm 6 months into doing comedy, and I'm at an open mic in Lowell, and this guy comes in who, it's like he was giving me a run for my money with the homeless look, and Sante's up to the mic, kind of hunched over, kind of creepy, and starts talking about he's on this quest. He's just here looking for medicine for his kid, and blah blah blah. And then he's like, "Oh wait, that's the God of War. That's the video game. I'm confused." And then he went into a set. It was really funny. I thought it was hysterical. Flash forward a year later, I'm helping out. Joe and I are helping out with the Boston Comedy Festival. And I'm like, I think that's the guy. And I go over and I say, hey, did you have this joke? And he looks at me like a little confused. He's like, I've only done that bit one time. And I'm like, well, I was there. I play video games, and man, did it hit a chord.
That made you realize how small of a world comedy is.
It really does.
Yeah, it is. It's insular. I can walk into any town in the United States with a small scene, like 50,000 people in the city, 3 mics a week, and someone recognizes me just because it is so insular. It's kind of like, I compare it to karaoke, where we think we're singing for everyone, but we're really just singing for the room and the other people who like karaoke. So what does that mean in the grand? We're not the next great philosophers, but I think that because of the internet or because of the pronouncement and the microphone and the whole bit, that you think that everyone's listening to you, but only a handful of people who are slightly interested in it.
I mean, I only do karaoke for myself, so like
you meet them all eventually. You meet almost all. You in this game, you end up collecting all the cards if you have an interest in it. you're like, oh, I almost got them all.
I guess hosted. So Casey and I, were on a show together that Casey was headlining a few weeks back, and Joe was there, and it was funny. It was hosted by a buddy of mine and a buddy of Joe's, Anthony, and his sidekick Wayne. They have a podcast. I co-hosted a podcast with them. And we were talking to a comedian named Dobie Maxwell. He's a Midwest comedian. He's not Chicago based. I think he might be like Milwaukee. And it's really funny when you say, Casey, what a tiny world it is. He starts saying, hey, yeah, no, I've worked with this guy. He knew, of course, like Tony and Jim, McHugh and Tony V. But he goes, yeah, I worked with this guy, Jack Lynch. And it's like, I've worked with you. And he's like, I worked with him one time down in Atlanta. And then I'm like, wait, Jack is a Boston comedian. This guy's Midwest. He worked one time down in Atlanta 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's come up in this conversation because it is such a tiny, everybody knows everybody, or at least knows a guy who's friends with that guy.
Right. I think there was a time when it was exciting to know a comedian.
Right.
It was like that guy, and now it's becoming more like commonplace. So if you knew somebody was a comedian, like it's kind of like that, I'm from South Dakota, and I'll ask the crowd, anybody been to South Dakota? And like, there'll usually be one person that'll raise their hand. They didn't stop. They drove through. So they're looking for any sort of connection, so it's one of those things where it's like, I'll tell people I'm from South Dakota. Oh, my aunt's from North Dakota. I'm like, 6 hours away from me, but you make connections like that, when you're forced to in life.
So let's get right into how long have you been doing this, and why? Why did you start doing this? What made you say, you know what, I can get up there and do this?
I started 11 years ago, and I think we talked about this earlier. A lot of comics will, once they get into the trying to eat portion of doing comedy, trying to live portion of doing comedy, they'll adjust their start date because you realize that until you jump into the ocean, into the lake, you're fucking around. You can fuck around for years with this, but it's like playing the guitar. You got to wash dishes. You got to be a dishwasher because you're a guitar player. And any other artistic endeavor really does take that kind of whatever, unless you're, a genius. But for me, I started in Omaha, Nebraska about 11 years ago with a group of friends who, I think in order to start comedy out of nothing, which is, I think, what they kind of did, you have to be a little dumb. You have to say, I've never done this before, but I think people will be interested in this thing. And I was with a group of guys who had that dumbness in them. And then because the area we were in was so sparse, if an act from Denver did come to Omaha where we were at, one of us would get the feature for him. There's only 5 people in town. It's not a question of good. It's a question of do we have the 4 guys who can go up before we bring Kyle to me? And I instantly got delved into that world of rock comedy a little bit. I didn't come up the traditional way. And I think that helped with my style. Because instead of being the line of guys outside the Funny Bone, a more traditional room in a mall usually, and having to adjust my material for those types of folks in order to make money, I was able to delve into a different kind of world right away where it's oh, this is also relevant, but I'm not going through the front door with my material like a lot of comedians do. I go through the side door, and you either like it or you don't,
Did you start off being like an absurdist character?
I think it became more of a security blanket, because when people who don't do it are like, I don't know if I could get up there, man. I'm like, I never really had too much of that thought of, I don't know if I could get up there, because 1, I was a musician with my wife for a little bit, but 2, it's a binky. This is my binky. I don't wear it all the time. I wear it less. But and then I have 4 corduroy jackets I buy from JCPenney's. I wore one on TV. They were $35.
So
I think my corduroy jacket and James Bond is standing next to me in a tuxedo. I didn't think about it the right way, but those are my binkies, and they allow me to get up there and shit out my thoughts easier. I worked with Dan Mintz one time. He plays a character on Bob's Burgers. He plays Tina on Bob's Burgers, and he does one-liners. And I did a Zoom show with him during the pandemic, and he was in his apartment in New York City, just in his apartment in New York City. And he needed, in order to perform, a microphone not plugged in, in a stand, and a red velvet curtain behind him to perform. Like that was his binky, like I get it. Emo. It's the same thing. This is my wig and suit.
So, so anybody who's just listening to it, Casey always wears, a knit hat. And when he logged onto the Zoom, I said, "I'm sorry, we're waiting for Casey Crawford." And when he put on the hat, it was like Clark Kent, like either Superman, either taking on or putting off the glasses. It literally changed. I mean, just the hat, is your whole Superman outfit. And it is kind of funny how, it was not like off-putting, but it was like almost a little jarring because I've never had a conversation with you when you didn't have the hat on.
Yeah, it is a little weird when people see me without, and it's not even there's so much sameness in comedy that a subtle difference stands out.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's like a little corsage in your pocket. People notice it, and I think that like your visage doesn't have to be important because you look like what ruled the day for years in comedy was the black t-shirt and the Louis C.K. black t-shirt, black jeans. Comedians, a lot of people in charge will say that, like, don't do anything to distract from your material. And to me, because of I think the rooms I work and the people I'm getting up in front of, the visage helps sell it. And it's not in place to do that. This is how I would dress, normally. Like if I'm going out, like before I did comedy, I was wearing this hat and that corduroy jacket. I mean, it's comfortable. I'm comfortable, and I think you wear what's comfortable.
But the slightest. So again, if you haven't seen, Casey in person, like he's in character and he gets up on stage hunched over. And you have that, a sling blade kind of like, speech pattern to you, was that when you started, when that developed? Is it like, well, if they don't like my material, they don't like me, they don't like that character? Was it
I think more than anything, what it is it's just a way to let people know that these are all jokes. There won't be any exposition here. And if you're not into hearing jokes, you're not going to like them. Because some people don't get that connection. They get up there and like, what is this guy? What's he talking about? Like, he's not telling anything true to me. I get that. You get the old guy sitting there, won't uncross his arms, and he's just like, you're not from the woods. I'm from the woods. Like, I get that. That's why like people ask me, come back to South Dakota and do comedy. And I'm like, I mean, I'm not at the level where I can make those people laugh because I'm making fun of those people. They don't like that shit. Like I go where the tall buildings are, where it's safe. But I think that more than anything, it's all just been a slowly shedding security blanket. It has. Some people take it off. Some people never do. Emo.
Right. Now, so you just started 11 years ago. So you pretty much had a meteoric first couple years because you went, how from your first mic to being on Kimmel, how long of a transition or how long of a
I think with Kimmel, I had friends. Like in any sort of opportunity you get in comedy, you take it, obviously. Hey, Jock, can you do 30? Sure. Like that's comedy, and then you somehow learn to do 30, because of that. It's the deadline basically that drives you to it. So when you get an opportunity, you take it. And I got one very early on in the game. And I think because of the way I was doing it was a little bit more like, because you can do one-liners because of the birth of Twitter and have them be good and funny, but I guess a little non sequitur and disposable. And I wanted to write jokes that were more like jokes you'd read on a bathroom wall that you remember 20 years later and laughed about.
Yes.
Like that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write street jokes for 2,200 or whatever. Like, I wanted to approach it that way, where it's like, I'm not Dunkin' Donuts. I'm the lady down on the corner who makes the little cupcakes that a handful of people really like. And she's not going to make a chain out of what she does, but she loves what she's doing. I'm making chainsaw bears on the corner, man.
That's
I'm not
awesome.
going to Home Depot. Like no, I think I come from like the punk rock mentality. I really do, because I don't like having a boss, and I think that's part of why I like punk, because no one can really tell me what to do. I need total control over whatever. If you don't like it, I don't care. That's fine. But like just that whole mentality has also gone into the process of it. It's just like I know, I think once you meet your heroes and they shake your hand and tell you what you're doing is viable and good, you don't care how well you do in Pelham, New Hampshire on a Tuesday. You got to eat, but at the same time, outside of the money, the art form and the fire that keeps me doing it is bad.
So who
I
shook
know,
your
I know I'm
hand?
good at this.
Who shook your hand
Over
and
the
told
years,
you?
over the years, if you keep doing this, a lot of people shake your hands, and some of them will make you promises that you wouldn't believe and never follow up on it. And some of them will email you out of the blue. But like I've met like I started when I was in my early 30s, and I got Montreal in 20, I want to say 16. So I don't even think I was out of my screwing around phase at that point. And I
Wow.
probably had 10 minutes of material total. But because I was in my mid 30s and everybody else they were looking at was 25, they assumed I was some sort of like road dog that they had never heard of, a diamond in the rough they had yet to discover, like how it's supposed to work.
Right, right.
But I was just as new as the other people, I was 4 or 5 years in. And like, it's just the difference was I wasn't like, I saw Twitter when that came out in '08 or whenever it came out. And I saw that, oh, you can write these jokes. That's perfect for one-liners. But at the same time, it's missing some sort of heart. I think that you can't display in a simple text. There has to be some sort of whatever behind it. And I'm like, so my stuff never translated well in that format. But then I also thought like, well, that means it's different in its own kind of way, because I'm getting these people to laugh. I can't get anybody to laugh on the internet, but I'm getting them to laugh doing it the way I'm doing it. So I knew I had something to keep going, but I didn't have a lot. And Montreal, that used to be a really big deal. And all they care about is your 7 minutes.
Right.
They're not, I mean, they might want to know what you're working on once you meet an agent up there, but for the most part, the people who booked that were like, well, it's a 7-minute audition. Okay. Well, anybody can come up with pretty hot 7 minutes in a couple of years, so you don't really get to show them what you have until someone seeks an interest in you later up there, like an agent who's like, what else can you do? And when I got that, I had 10 minutes. So what else could I do when they asked me? Oh, because I did really well up there. And they were like, what else can you do? And I'm like, nothing. I make these little cupcakes. It took me 6 years to make 30 of them. Sorry. Give me 2 months and I'll give you 2 more jokes. But also I have to say to myself, and shortly after that, because of that, I got Kimmel, and the same deal. I had probably 15 minutes of material then total. What was I able to do with that? Not much. So like I came into it all later in the game, like you're coming into it, and I got it. And I think people kind of assumed things about me, like, oh, he's been doing it so long, he's probably got all these jokes. And I'm like, no, I'm just a little puppy. I found it late in life, and I'm not going to stop doing it, because like I learned early on when I started playing music, what I loved about that was that when it came to music, it wasn't like the football team where the coach could be like, year in, year out. There's an in and out. Anybody can get a guitar. Anybody can play music. Anybody can go to an open mic. I can sit at my kitchen table and write songs till I die. There's no police with that. There's no police with this either. And that's what drives me, is that there's no one going to walk through this door and be like, Casey, comedy police, you're done. It's all on me. I love that.
I think all the comedy police moved to Twitter.
Yeah, I think, no, it's the same thing with podcasts. There's no barrier to entry, and there's nobody that says you're not good enough to keep doing this, because otherwise
Exhibit A.
they would have made Joe and I shut down in 2016 after episode 4, we touched the sun, and they would have been like, you know what? I think this is as good as you guys are going to get 300 and some later. But with you're an academic. Like, you are from South Dakota. You went to school in Nebraska. And did your wife is she has a doctorate. Yes.
Mhm.
And did you get something besides a bachelor? Did you,
I got a master's.
you did get a master's. I thought so.
There was about a 2-month period where we both thought we would be teachers, because her parents are teachers. So it's like, it's in her blood, and you guys met her. Like, she's really good at it. Like,
So smart.
she can just talk to people like I can't talk to people. So I'm always constantly impressed by her, but like, I don't come from that. She comes from high school teachers who are smart and went on and did what you're supposed to do, which is go get your PhD when you have 2 parents with like, if you're not, then you're doing it decidedly as a kind of a fuck you thing, like you, sir. But like, I never had that. My dad's a janitor. Like, I think I went to grad school because she went to grad school, like a lot of people do. Like, yeah, I quit drinking because my wife quit drinking, or I quit this, or I guess I got to go to grad school now. Fuck. Oh, we both went. I was the one who had to pay for it. You met her.
Well, so,
I paid for it.
So
Take your money.
you're getting your master's degree, and so you're 22, 23, getting a master's degree.
No, late in that too, man. That was like, I got a late start. I did some like Kerouacian type shit after high school, so I didn't go to college till I was in my mid-20s, and grad school for me wasn't till right around when I started comedy.
Oh, nice.
Because what I got out of grad school wasn't a job, but it was the ability to learn how to write. I always enjoyed writing, but I never had like a teacher who was like, "Hey, you're pretty decent at this. You want to go to college for it and not get a job?" Like, no one ever said that to me. A few times, but it wasn't until comedy that I was like, "Oh shit, man, I'm writing a thesis. I'm pretty sure I can write this 11-word joke." Chop all the fat off of it. Like, it teaches you to write concisely. It teaches you the power of words. And when you're writing at that kind of like level where it's just like, God damn, I gotta pump out 150 pages of this shit.
Is the title of your thesis and your bit the longest sentence that you have structured in your bit?
There was a time when emo. Well, I think he was the godfather of that. Like, I'm gonna go. It's a misdirection. They're all misdirection. But it says, how far over here am I going before I turn around, right? So that's emo, in my opinion. And I'm sure there's somebody else, but when I heard those types of things, that's who I heard them from first. And like, it's just, how long can you go? How many cats is too many cats? That used to be 7 questions, I think, Jacques. And I thought but you ultimately end up, for safety purposes, going with whoever came up with the rule of threes. Or it's just like the third time, it's just, it's a joke or whatever. Like, but like, how I think emo is great in that sense that he's one who's like, how far out can I go?
Right.
And his I don't know if you know, is a die heretic.
It's one of me and Joe, because that is so applicable in every walk of life. Like, so we were talking last night, Casey, about what a subculture we're in. But how these subcultures will become divided. You think, oh, I see the pavement, poster, behind you. And I'm like, so I already think you're funny. I already think you're a good guy. Now I know you like pavement. But if I find out that you don't think Slanted and Enchanted is their best album, well, fuck that piece of shit. You
at some point, it just becomes 2 cats in a bag.
Right.
Yeah, you almost want to have dissimilar interests with people just because I'm tired of me. I hate me. I don't need another me.
Well, it's funny when it's like when you see whether it's comics. My wife is in the dog rescue world, and it's so funny how many of the people in the dog rescue world hate each other. And it's
Yeah.
like to the point where they'd almost rather this dog stay in the shelter and be euthanized than that bitch over there rescue, because I don't like the way she does home checks. Wait,
Yeah.
what? But I
Yeah.
thought you guys had the same, but that when that whole
No.
die, you heretic.
Yeah.
It's
He-
Emo's best.
in that idea of misdirection, I've heard that when emo goes out now lately, he does that joke for 10 minutes. He just keeps going, yeah, which part of
Right.
because initially on the record it was like what, maybe a 2-minute bit?
Yeah.
3? I'm saying it's like 10. He
Well-
just keeps going. It is. I want to see it. I've not seen it, but I hear it's amazing.
It's
It's like
his-
jazz, you know. It's just like you
Yeah.
can kind of improv and not
Yeah,
improv,
he-
but just add to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's so good at world building. Like, because I think in order to keep going with like one-liners, if you're not doing non sequiturs, or it's like Kim Kardashian, whatever else is going on, whatever else, you have to give them like an emotional depth and an emotional weight, I think, in order to keep telling it. Right. So he knows that. He
Well-
knows there has to be a narrative behind it in order to make the jokes meatier.
It's his hungry like the wolf for Duran Duran. So everybody knows the punchline to the aristocrats. So now he is just making you wait longer to get there, like
Yeah.
putting it at the end, but the absurdity that he can build upon it, because you know what the payoff is going to be. You know what the left hook is now. But so for him to keep making that joke be awesome is how specific with the absurdities he can get. Like, do they like the same breakfast cereal? Do they both use 2% milk? And it's like, and it just builds up. But I would love to see him do it. Like Joe and I saw him a couple years ago, and it's funny. Joe had saw him
Here in town at the festival.
Yeah, but
Me too. I was at that show.
in was it Somerville, Joe? We saw Arlington. Joe had seen him 6 months earlier opening for Weird Al. And Weird Al was doing not the hits. Like it was for obscure Weird Al fans like Joe, who knows the original stuff, who knows the B-sides to an original that he put out. And Emo opened.
Yeah.
It was a half-hour set, and the best thing is Emo came out and said, "Who saw me 6 months ago?" And it's like, Joe and a couple people are clapping. He goes, and this was an hour set. He goes, "This is the same set. I'm gonna talk slower."
Yeah.
This is my question about emo, because I would love to see him just show up for show. How much changeover is there of material for him? Because he doesn't put records out, so is he just throwing in new jokes occasionally? And like, is it just kind of like, are you hearing a lot of old stuff?
I would imagine it's a lot of the hits. He probably has like a solid set that, like you said, he does sprinkle in an occasional, maybe new stuff that he might try out every now and then. I mean, he's active on Twitter still. Like he still like plops down one-liners that, if you read it
And
in
they're
the
all
emo
new.
voice, are great.
Yeah. That's the thing with Twitter, is like, you don't know someone's voice. If you know a celebrity, you know what emo sounds like when he's reading that, but like everyone else is just slave to the font.
Yeah.
Well,
Other comics have said that. It's like Mike Vecchione. I love Mike Vecchione, but he's like, I can't do Twitter. It just, my stuff doesn't work on there. And I felt good when he said that, because I was like, I thought, oh geez, here it is. Here's the medium for me. Short jokes. Holy shit, but not for everybody.
It's
You
almost
can
like
write a joke about
everybody's-
Kim Kardashian. Yeah.
Everybody who writes on Twitter you have to be able to read it in the Dennis Miller cadence. Like that's where,
Mhm.
like that's when it all
Yeah.
lands.
News of the
fits
world.
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
That smarmy kind of, hey babe,
Yeah. Mhm.
but
I agree.
trick question, or not a trick question, is there does anybody have the ability to read an emo tweet without in his voice in your head? Like, because that's what makes, like, his jokes, and there's so many comedians I love, what they're saying might not really be that funny unless it's in their cadence. It's very specific to their with you guys, when you're like, does everybody like to have fun? It's such a line that every comedian says. But when you're doing it in character, it's like, okay, put a seatbelt on because I don't know where this freak is taking us. You know,
I think that's. I don't know how long it takes to get sick of doing it that way, but I always just enjoyed the idea in comedy of I do not know what is coming next.
Okay.
You know? And I think that's always what attracted me. Can you do that for an hour and people are still interested in it? I don't know. But that's why I like it, where I'm like, I don't know. I want to listen to every word this guy says because I don't know what he's going to say.
When you write, are you writing and you're the voice that we're talking now, or are you writing in your character?
I write nowadays. I tell young comics, especially the cis white male ones, like, hey man, if you're gonna start out telling jokes about rape, you're gonna marry that woman at some point, and those rape jokes are gonna have to change because you're gonna have to tell jokes about your wife if you want to talk about that, and she's not gonna like there's an evolution I think that anybody undergoes when you do this. Some people start on the like, I want to be Bill Burr, which I think was probably the camp that I came from. I came from the Skanks for the Memories. Kind of like we can say what we want because it's all kind of understood that we're good people, like that whole idea, but that's now gone. Now you can't. So like just that whole idea, I guess, is evolved over the years. It has, because I'm now married. I'm 45 years old, and anytime I write something, I say to myself, am I going to be telling this in 5 years? Do I believe in this enough? And I think that the problem when you're writing your first great project, like, because I'm making a record, is that I'm working with Casey yesterday and Casey 11 years ago.
Right.
And all those jokes either have to be dropped or come together in some sort of way. And that can become a real difficulty, especially when, it's not 2 years for me, it's 10 that I'm compiling all this stuff. And like Casey 6 months in, sure like to tell jokes that sometimes dehumanized other people because he didn't know what he was doing. But Casey at 45 is much more seasoned and knows how to do it. And like somehow I have to bring those people together. And that's what I've slowly been doing. Because you guys will see, like, it's like Street Fighter. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. And if they ain't buying what I'm selling, if they ain't buying the first joke, they're going to buy the other 200 jokes. You either have the hat on or you don't. And like, that's the problem for me. I go to Milwaukee, I go to, gravel road places, and they're like, what the hell is this? What is this? This isn't real. You're not being real. Like, and that can be a real problem. But like what I've tried to do over the years is like, if I'm going to write a one line, it's like we talked, Jock, I'm painting on a tiny little canvas. Some people see comedy and they're like, I'm going to paint the wall with my idea. And I'm like, I like these little tiles. And I work on one at a time. And then I'm going to put them on the wall, maybe, and hopefully the wall comes together. I don't know what it's going to look like, but all I care about is this. This is all I can think about, And like that whole idea also doubled on the idea that it's also narrative structure, like emo, where it's like, I'm from South Dakota, I'm this age, like everything goes under like in a narrative umbrella, and not a non sequitur thing where it's like non sequitur, like late night jokes, built with like a kind of meat behind them to last, so that you do kind of get sick of hearing them, but if it's been 2 years and you haven't heard Cats Laser Light Show, you'll laugh.
Well, that's one of those ones where forevermore, if I'm ever, hey, there's a laser light show here, I'm just going to start giggling, and somebody's going to be like, why is that funny? And then I'm going to have to explain your whole bit. Like, that's one of those bits that will now live in my head for infinity, because it's just so absurd that it will. I forgot what I had for breakfast, but I won't forget that bit the rest of my life.
Thank you. I think that's a perfect example. That was an early one of just like absurdity to me comes from combining realism with unrealism and just like putting them together. But or like we said, like it lives in the gray area between real and not real. So it exists. Any absurdist concept, in my opinion, exists in this area of believability and possibility, but barely. And that's what makes it funny. like we said, you can't really write a joke about a paperclip riding a motorcycle, but you can write a joke about a bear riding a motorcycle. You never see it, but does it exist within the realm of possibility? Yes. And in my opinion, that's what absurdism is. And that's what I pull from. We're like, is that what would happen if you took a bunch of cats to a laser light show? Probably. That was a real early one. 3 years in, I think I wrote that one. And that was one of those ones where you learn, like, oh, it's a real one-liner. It is a real one-liner, which are rare to have a real one-liner. Usually it's two, right? 2 lines, 2 sentences, 3. Just to have one and realizing that it becomes a little stick of dynamite where it's like, man, in 5 seconds, I can get these people going. And it's taken this other person 2 minutes to get even his premise out. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm punching real fast here if I do this. Then you realize, oh, I can't do that every day. It was just some sort of magic where these 2 things come together and you see a slice of the pie and you say, no one's taking this slice of this pie. I'm going to take it and it's going to be mine. And I remember writing that. And then 2 years later, I'm in a mall somewhere in the Midwest. And I saw a shirt at one of these like bootleg t-shirt stores where you can make your own one that had a bunch of cats at a laser light show.
Oh.
And I'm like, and that's when I kind of realized that, like, when you see like Comedy Mania after like a cultural event, like maybe the first one to write a joke about this, right? It works with any sort of like cultural concept as well. I think a little bit slower, where it's just like you have to have these things kind of like cross the horizon. Cats and lasers just have to be in everyone's.
It's
I
in
tell
the
a joke
zeitgeist. Yeah.
Right, exactly, and it's in the ether.
Yeah.
And because all the gears are always turning, one of us kind of gets to it first every time, eventually, And
So
I think that would have been the case with like kind of that idea. I'm sure there are other people that had that idea. It's just that putting in like a one-liner joke, and then it's out there. And then it becomes just part of the thing that you can't control anymore. And then it becomes less you. And I think writing jokes like that, I realize, like, make them a little bit more me so no one else can have them.
Well,
no one can put this on a t-shirt later. It's just going to be a Casey thing. That's how you own the rights. That's the emo way.
Yeah.
You make it very emo and it's nobody else's.
right. Because that, again, now you're doubling down because you're saying that in a voice, you're saying that in a character, you're saying that just your persona is an absurdist kind of character. So you're saying that, and so I think that's why it's even funnier because laser cats, laser show, haha. But this guy, because in that character, you can see that guy sneaking 7 cats into a laser
The voice
show.
the voice in and of itself is sort of a shorthand to disengage from the premise. Like you don't need to set up the premise for so long because your voice instantly like paints a picture of a character that like, okay, this is that type of guy. And then whenever you say something absurd, it's like, all right, now coming from this particular guy, this makes sense. Or in this contest, this is funnier.
You're exactly right, Joe. It really is. It's like poetry in that. Now, I'm not bragging in that sense. But it's like poetry where you're like, there's a rhythm. And once you get that rhythm locked in, then like your brain as a listener is kind of trained to be like, da, 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 da. Like they all have emo says that too. You listen to him, like, hey, there's people that think that I don't know if it's beats per minute. Yeah, beats per minute.
Yep,
if you go by a certain BPM, that it's like the rhythm people want to hear when they're listening. And like I'd be interested to know what mine is, but that is calculated because that's what locks the joke in. Because I'm talking about word economy, right? The hardest part for me about going to a laser light show is trying to get all my cats to sit still. So I don't know how many words that is. 10. Okay, there's no fat on there, right? No fat at all. There's no adjectives to color the verbs. It's all chopped off. And once that gets chopped off, then it becomes about finding that rhythm. That joke's always going to go just like a E.E. Cummings or somebody like that comes into play when I'm writing. And I think it does for a lot of short joke people. Obviously, it's got to rhythm and then just that kind of like where it's bouncing. And then because that locks it in. And that's when you kind of know this is exactly how it's going to go because I got the rhythm right. And
well, it's funny, taking a step back when you were talking about how some jokes that you wouldn't tell anymore because the Casey that you are now married and older wouldn't be that kind of guy. And it's interesting because I heard like Sarah Silverman, it's a 2-part thing where Sarah Silverman was on Al Franken and she was saying if she listens to something 5 years ago. It just, she can't believe, like, she hates everything 5 years later. And she says, I always want to be like that because I want to be growing, yada, yada. But on the other hand, there's evergreens, and there's some stuff where, you and I were talking. I got this Mom's Mabley album, a couple years ago on a road trip, and the album was like from 58, 59. Every single bit could be told today. Like, there was nothing that absolutely, wouldn't work. And when you talk about an evergreen that's 60 years old, routine and stuff, like, so a lot of your stuff is like that. So when you're talking about doing an album, so
will they have laser light shows 50 years from now?
you know what?
No.
Will they have cats? Will there still be cats?
Yeah, no, that always comes into account, especially now, because when if I'm writing and it's average, if I can write 3 jokes, good ones in a month, then that's a thumbs up for me. So if I have one I have to kill, I lose. That's all that lost production time. So it's always weighed into that factor. I have a joke. We were talking Jock last night. Took me 6 years to graduate from college. Undergrad, I could have done it in 4, but I was finishing up some Napster downloads. Like, who knows that joke who's 23? Nobody. Right. But like, we're still within the window of time on it, and I don't care about that's the other thing with comedy. I remember watching Mystery Science Theater at 12 and 13 years old and not getting at least half of the references. I got them more as I watched them over the years, but at first I didn't. And I don't think it has to be a situation where you get everything. If the machine gun of bullets is coming at you, that's fine if you don't get everything. That's to my advantage as a person doing longer form comedy now. But like, I realized that over time, like, man, some of my favorite shit in the entire world that makes me laugh, I don't understand a lot of it. Maybe that's what feels so appealing about it. But like, I'm okay with that in comedy as well, especially when it comes to my comedy. If I'm doing 200 jokes, 3 of them might not land on a good night. And I'm okay with that. Because one, they get kind of seen as exposition, and it's different when you're doing a longer set with short jokes. Because if I'm doing 5 minutes like Boston Comedy Festival, 5 minutes, right? One of those jokes bombs, we're done.
Right.
One of those jokes bombs on a night where I'm doing 45 and the other 200 of them were just fine. No one fucking cares. They just act like they just didn't understand it. Like, that's the other thing with it's like dynamite. It's a process where you set it, and if you screw up a thing, it doesn't go off right. So with the short stuff, I have to say to myself, get rid of do they think this is funny? It's, do they even understand it? Because I'm talking about word economy. They miss a word. They don't understand a word. The whole thing's dead. Doesn't even matter if it's funny. And then above that is, do they think it's funny, or do they think it might be like too offensive? Like, those are the 3 questions I ask myself when I get silence. And it's always, when silence comes, it's always, they don't understand it. And that's the trick of the shorter ones, where it's just like, yeah, she spilled a drink over there during one of the words that is very necessary for this thing to work. And yeah, it goes by so quick. So like, you're walking a tightrope sometimes when you do it that way.
Let's talk about the Boston Comedy Festival, if we may. First of all, do you do a lot of festivals like this?
I've done the Boston Comedy Festival. This would have been my 3rd time. Both 2 times I got to the finals. I didn't have as many bullets as I have now. So both of those 2 times I was just excited to be there. Thought I had a good chance, like every time, but no one ever knows. So like, no one ever knows. I mean, maybe there were years where I wasn't there where someone was just like, holy shit, I won that. Did you see that shit? I won that motherfucker. I'm sure there have been, but every other time I've gone, it's just a group of people down there being like, well, that was pretty fun. I have no idea what's going to happen next. That was every time. But yeah, this would have been my 3rd time doing this one. But yeah, I've done Limestone in Bloomington, which is a great festival. That might be, in my opinion, the best one. But I've done Montreal. I did Bridgetown in Portland before they stopped doing that. I've done a lot of smaller ones too. Not a lot of them, but I don't do them as much anymore because I'm older. They're harder to get into, as you go along, because once they see you, they don't, unless you're working on shit or building, it's hard to go back. So you kind of get you kind of get in a situation where it's like, all right, well, there's so many of them. Even here, there's so many of them, and it's real easy to call yourself the this or the that festival. It is.
But the
Yeah,
Boston
no comedy
one,
police.
but the Boston one being, 24 years old, having so many famous people having done it, like the different things, it does have some gravitas to it. So this was your third time on the final stage. When you went up, did you really feel like, yep, you know what, I wasn't going to do any better, or did you walk off the stage thinking, I could have hit that note harder?
Oh yeah, all three of my sets were not as good as I wanted them to be. No, because it's like the added element is time. 5 minutes is not a lot of time. One mistake and you're done. Especially when everybody's got a killer five. Everybody's got a killer five. So like that element is what makes it a little different. If we'd have been doing 20 or 30, different story, but like landing the plane, I wasn't something I felt like I did as well as I've done in other nights. Like I was doing a lot of theater shows up in New Hampshire with Justin McKinney. Well, this was last year. Like I do 15, McKinney would go on for an hour and a half. But I do my 15 in these theaters, and there's like, 700-800 people there. So I'm used to the big crowds. A lot of the younger folks there, the new people, that was their first time getting up in front of that many people. Like it's hard to ignore the pressure that's got to come with that. Whereas I'm like up there and I'm like, well, every time I've done that iPad joke for the last 2 years or whatever, I've been doing it in these theaters, I got to wait 20 seconds for that fucking thing to be over before I can move on to the next thing. I knew that going in. And I'm like, if these people like me, which they probably do because they're liking everybody, that joke is going to, so like instead of in 5 minutes in a normal set, that might be like last night, 4 jokes a minute. So 20 jokes. At that theater, 2.5 jokes a minute.
Right.
And then you don't know that. You don't know that. There's been times when I did that festival and it was at the Somerville Theater one year and there wasn't that many people there. And that one was packed to the gills, right? So it's like
packed.
Yeah, like 4 or 5 jokes you just end up dropping. And then you don't know, you just kind of have to tell yourself, I want to end it on this one, but you don't always get to do that because you're giving me the light already. So it's like, all right, I'm done.
I apologize.
I did okay, but not the best I could do. No, I'd say that for all 3 of those rounds. Maybe a lot of comics would say that, but no. I've had, yeah.
So Joe and I were Joe was doing the timing and I was shining the light. And when you guys were coming on stage, the 10 finalists, I don't like to be in the room for that stuff. I have too much anxiety and I don't want anybody to lose type thing, but as Joe and I were walking back down to the green room, we had a conversation and I don't remember if I thought, I was like, okay, it's either Casey or Angelica. And then Joe said, I think it's Angelica or Casey, but we both thought it was definitely one of the two of you, for sure.
I didn't see her set. I saw it during the semis. You know what's funny is you're so in your head about that. There's another guy who was on the festival. I don't know if you've interviewed Brian McKenna.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Brian and I were in the hallway. We hadn't spoken that night yet, but we looked at each other and we were like, oh, is this your first Boston Comedy Festival? And he's like, no, I was here I think it was 2021. I'm like, I was here in 2021. He's like, yeah, I made it to the finals. So did I. And then we pulled up a picture and there we are standing right next to each other.
Wow.
But you're so in your head. Because you're backstage, all you hear are just everyone's doing well. I'm not listening specifically. I think Maria was in the finals before me, and she did a joke about the Green Line or the subway. And I remember hearing that and then thinking, all right, don't do your subway joke. Don't do the Green Line joke, because she did a subway joke. And that was the only part of it I heard. Because at that point, you're just battling against, I think, yourself.
Right. Well,
yeah, it's not going to do you any good. Yeah.
We had our last guest a couple of weeks ago was a kid, Joe Katz, who was on there, and I think
he was funny.
What I think what made you three stand out to Joe and I, it's like, Brian McKenna and stuff like that, all great comics up there, but what separated, I think, you two, you and Angelica, and putting Joe Katz in that category, is you're just so much different, where she incorporated her dance into it, you know.
Yeah, she won the stage presence. I remember reading that, like the 3 categories, and I'm like, well, I'm not gonna win that.
well, the funny thing is, so her first joke, she takes up the entire stage. And then when she ties it back in and you think she's going to dance again, and she's like, I'm going to do some Irish step dancing. And then she goes, but I'm just going to do the upper body. And she stands still, which it's a juxtaposition. But you, with your character and your absurdist, and so, you know, Joe Cat's the same. But we really walked downstairs, Joe and I, you know, it's one of the two of you. We really felt it. And when your name was called, were you surprised, or were you just like, yeah, I think I have this?
I think more than anything, like, one, I'll say this about the medium, 5 minutes. I'm sure if you would have asked Brian McKenna or told him, hey, you're going to be in the Boston Comedy Festival, the last round is 5 minutes, he'd have been like, that's not enough time for me to show you Brian McKenna. He knows if that thing would have been an hour, no question that motherfucker would have won. He's doing that every weekend. Like, it's 5 minutes. So and when you get right to it, and Joe, she's so cool. Performer, born performer. She wants to get up there. I think the difference between a person like her and me is, like, I am forced to get up there. You know, I just put me in my chair and let me write my jokes, and I guess I got to go say them to see if the people think they're funny. But she's like, I'll go. I want to get up there on stage, and I'm like, that's the difference. But I'm like, that person's gonna make it. I look at that, and I'm like, she's gonna make it. You know, and I look like I'll be back here writing jokes, you know, like it's a different approach, but also it's an approach where it's just like, given the 5 minute medium, just getting right to it like that is your best bet, you know, or just like, just come punch right away. Other people, to take you into their world, they kind of got to go up a little bit of an escalator. But when you're doing just kind of like dynamic, shorter stuff, like it's really easy to just punch. I'm punching you 15 times in 5 minutes. Some people are punching you 5 times in 5 minutes. These are smaller punches if you want them to be, but you'll go down. You know, it's just from a number standpoint, it's hard in a 5 minute thing to beat a person doing shorter jokes. Joe Katz, perfect example, short jokes, right? Just, yeah, he's making you laugh every 20 seconds. It's just like, from that standpoint, from the quantitative portion of it, yeah, those people are, if they have the solid material, they're going to make it in a shorter setting, in a 5 minute, whatever. I now think I could go win any 5 minute comedy contests in the whole world. You know, anything longer than that, I don't know. But like, you figure out how to beat the level, you know, eventually you do figure out how to beat the level. You'll get anybody who's won that thing. The big difference, I think, from what I have seen all the way down the list recently, is if you're winning that, you're already a headliner. Tricks. Yeah. The guy won. They're doing hours already. It's hard for them to condense what they're doing down into 5 minutes, but they're already, it's almost like you're past to that level. It sounds so weird, but you're already like, yeah, I know I can do this. For me, think about it. I was on TV, right? You know, now I work in a gas station, but I was on TV. So for me to go to do the Boston Comedy Festival, I know what I'm getting into. I lose that motherfucker. What am I? What's my relevancy? A guy who was funny, but now he can't get 5 minutes together to, you know, everybody in that festival is largely made up of some people who have been doing it a long time, but a lot of times it's kids with a hot 7-10 minutes. They got hot 10. And that's who you're competing against, is these proto Saturday Night Live kids that are going to be running shit in New York and in Los Angeles in 2 years. And right now they're getting their first hot 10 and they're hungry, and you got to take them down. But I always thought that the longevity for me in this game was, I will go to the mic and I will try and write jokes and keep up with this 23-year-old kid who, whatever. And I'm not going to stop doing that. After a while, you look around, you go to the mics, and you're like, where are all the other 50-year-olds? They're not there. You know, they might be writing shit and throwing it in on their Wednesday sets, but like, I'm going to the mics and I'm going to get down in the trenches, and I will Spartacus myself joke-wise every time. I'll win the Boston Comedy Festival, and then the next day I will go to the mic. You know, and that's I think the place that I'm coming from now, where it's like, I will not stop doing this.
Well, I want to talk about what you have coming up. First of all, you know, I hope your much better half doesn't think we're kidding when I said we definitely want to have her on the podcast
Oh,
when
yeah,
you
should
guys
be
are on your road trip. Because the thing is, it's like
Oh, cool.
we have lots of comics, but we've had lots of authors on. Like, like a guest a couple months ago wrote the definitive book. It's called Live from the Underground: A History of College Radio. But it's not just
yeah.
about how, Mission of Burma led to pavement. It's about how this Land Grant Act in 1936 led to money opening up for these towers being built type thing. It's so, but we love having academics. But you guys are about to pretty much go on let's bring Albert Brooks back into the picture.
Lost in America.
Lost in America. You are never to say the words eggs or nest again. If we're, oh, look at that place that birds live. But you guys are about to do that, and so you're about to do comedy all over the place. Tell us your thoughts to going into that road trip and what you hope to get out of this.
Well, I've never put like a record out, but this is a year 11 and I got the time now to do it. So on September 20th, I'm going to make a record at the Rockwell Theater. Janet McNamara is going to feature. And I'm going to put it on vinyl and sell it out of the back of my van and drive around. And my wife has sabbatical. So she's going to be working on a project, and we're going to live in a van and in the desert, and then I'm going to do comedy on the weekends for about 7 months. I have not lined it out completely, but it's going to be a long time. We've done things like that before. We don't have kids, so it's always just been like our summers, because she's a teacher, are like, well, let's do something crazy. You've done crazy shit, but like, yeah, one year we worked in Yosemite. Yeah, we've done like 2-3 month long camping trips before. And this is just going to be like another version of that. Only now I'll be able to do comedy on it. So it's kind of like the life I've always wanted, really. Just have her drive. She runs the merch table. I just tell the jokes. Like, if she's willing to do that for a couple of months during the summer, then I got a good deal going for sure.
No, that's absolutely amazing. And you plan on doing comedy in places that aren't considered comedy hotbeds, which is kind of an interesting and you don't have routing. You're just going to go from point A, that, like when you were talking about it, that you're not going to go on a linear line. You're not going to go, I'm going to start here in Massachusetts. The goal is to wind up here and then come back.
I think more than anything, that was more what I learned when I went on tour with a friend, where it's like, if I'm doing it this way, either it's going to take me a couple more years to try and reach out to people who aren't getting it to try and get that, or I'm going to say, I'm just going to go to Cambridge and Asheville and Lawrence and just the little speck of blue, just that part in each place, and not go to Wichita or the place where it doesn't always work out so well, and like kind of go that whole kind of go where you wanted mentality.
Right.
Whereas I think before I thought like, oh, you go on the road, it's just like, tonight you're in Des Moines, and then you're in Sioux City, and then you're in Lincoln. It's like, no, because no one in Sioux City bought any tickets. Like, I think comedically, like, remember when Patton Oswalt 20 years ago was like, oh, we should do comedy in rock clubs?
Yes.
Remember that? And then he started doing rock club tours. Like, I don't know why he was the first guy to think of that obviously easy idea that we're all the same kind of umbrella of people. I don't know why we have to cater to, I know comedy's for everybody, but I just don't understand why it has to cater to people that only go see it once. Why not fans? Like, here's what I don't like about art.
Wait, hold on.
When you go see comedians, when you go see bands, do you think, other than like a weird festival, like Nothing Means Anything lineup of like this band completely unrelated to this sound, like when you go see bands, and there's 5 bands at the Paradise, chances are the genres are going to be similar, right?
Yeah.
These are 5 punk bands. You don't walk in there and then like, oh, there's a jazz band and then a punk band. Like, no, the hat is already on and you already know what you're getting. It doesn't work that way with comedy.
Yeah, it's like the Ed Sullivan show.
Yeah, it's like, maybe it does at the Lyric Hyperion in Los Angeles, where it's like, yeah, all 5 of us are absurdists. You know what you're getting. any other place, Boston, any other place. It's just like pizza. What kind of pizza is it? Oh, it's pizza. You know, well, no wonder this isn't working. It's because you're just saying comedy. What kind of comedy is it? Well, this guy's a weirdo. All right, well, I'm good then. You know, like it doesn't get treated like other art forms. Pavement is not going to go on the Ellen DeGeneres show. You know,
right,
yeah, and they shouldn't expect for things to go well if they do go on the Ellen. And they might reach about like they understand that they go where they're wanted. This does not work that way because money is involved and clubs are like, we got to get as many people out here as possible. And everybody's got to be here for 2 hours to buy 4 drinks. Like that idea is what drives the entire business, not the art side of it, because that is why there's so much disappointment in comedy. And that is why so many people go to one show and never come back because they don't understand what they're getting. And I don't know why that's not better clarified. I mean, sure, you can't advertise an alternative comedy show in Manchester, New Hampshire, and expect droves of people to come out. You just have to say comedy and hope that the numbers are on your side so you can get the wine moms or whoever comes just because there's nothing to do. But like, I don't know why we're doing it like that. Do you think your favorite band cares about wine moms? They don't. They care about their fans who like their music. And this does not work that way.
Yeah, no,
it's not celebrated that way. It should be.
It is. It is, and no one has figured it, you know, that kind of stuff out yet. You know, I mean, there's certain things that's like, you know, where a Nick's Comedy Stop, you kind of, or in the old days, you used to kind of understand what you were getting, or like, you know, on certain places like. You know, if it's a Pride thing, you kind of understand, oh, this is a Pride comedy show, so you're going to get a lot of, you know, that kind. But everything else, it's like, yeah, you know, I do a lot of stuff.
I mean, if I may interject, so like when bands come up, you know, they would play in like clubs that were dedicated to that type of music. They would cater to that scene. You know, they found their niche. It's like, we're going to get these types of people in every single night, and they're the ones that are going to bring their dollars. Whereas comedy is like comedy and alcohol, comedy and dinner, comedy and this. It's like, you know, comedy and puppet show. There's always comedy and, like, it's not comedy isn't necessarily, unless it's like a Nick's, for the most part, the broader comedy scene
it's the equivalent of like
you're partnered with something else.
Yeah, it's like equivalent of trying to get your mom to like Black Sabbath. Mom, you might like Black Sabbath. I'm pretty sure I won't. All right, well, let's go say, oh, I didn't like it. No shit. Okay. It's not for her, you know?
I want to go back just 20 seconds, Joe. If I've told you once, I've told you 1,000 times. It's comedy show first, then puppet show. Sorry about that. I always fall down the road. We got a bigger dressing
Spinal
room,
Tap.
bigger than the fucking puppets. You know? Spinal Tap and then puppet show.
We had a Stonehenge that was in danger of being
crushed by a dwarf.
Don't worry about Boston. It's not a big college.
which, and again, that's one of those things where if you get that joke like a Mystery Science Theater thing, then it's the funniest joke in that. One of the best movies ever. But if you don't get that joke, you're probably not going to like this movie to begin with. You know what I mean? It is one of those.
I agree. I wish there was more of that. Like, I wish there was more of that in comedy, where it's just like, because I know what I like, and if there was a place where what I like was just like, that's what's so great about the Comedy Studio. You know, when that was going, it's going again. But like, what was great about it was like, it was a home for difference to be celebrated, because relationally what's going on over in the Seaport and in other parts of town are not for everybody.
Right.
You know, they're definitely trying to cater to, a lot of times, to the wine mom who doesn't like comedy and just wants to come out. They're trying to do that much more so than the Comedy Studio that's like, we're not coming through the door, we're coming through the window. If that's your thing, this is where it lives.
Well, you know what?
It needs to exist here.
The show we did a few weeks ago, there were three wine moms right in front of you, just to the left, who literally, I think, were your biggest fans that night. And it was, I loved, one of my favorite things is when you know, I love being at comedy shows, seeing great comics, but also seeing who clicks with who. And it was
Yeah.
just really funny that when they walked in, I wouldn't have said, okay, these people are
Yeah.
going to eat everything he throws with them with a spoon. But they did. Casey,
They seem like, from just a theoretical standpoint, they seem like that barbed wire barricade that's
Yeah.
up right in front of the guys with guns.
Yes,
That's what they seem
yes.
like to me. Like, oh, they just put them right. Okay, but no, it's never who you think. It's
Right.
not like last night we were in Manchester, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and there was that table full of older folks back there, and there were the older gentlemen. They're sitting there with their arms crossed. They pretty much kind of did what I thought they were going to do all night. Slightly chuckle every once in a while, but you never know who's going to. And then up here, there was three ladies, and one of them she was just crying. She was laughing
Whole time.
and I would have never. You
Whole
never
time.
thought. Yeah, you don't think, but I'm like, my gosh, you're sitting right up front. You're here. You're in Manchester. You know what's up. Right. Like, so, after a while, your brain justifies it. But at first, you're like, okay, that's going to be a problem. But then you can never assume anything with comedy. Never assume anything with comedy. You will fuck yourself if you do that.
Right.
Yeah. The second time I did the Boston Comedy Festival finals at the Somerville Theater. I don't know if it was raining or cold or what. There just wasn't that many. It wasn't filled, and a theater that's not full is hard. It's like a movie theater.
Yeah.
There is no cohesion, and it can be hard to get. But I just assumed it was going to be filled. It was filled the first year I did it. And then you get out there and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. This will fuck you when it wants to fuck you. If you make a mistake, yeah. You can't assume anything. You get into a room and you're like, oh no, there's three people here. Fuck. And then you feel for three people. And then you're like, that wasn't so bad. Sometimes that happens.
No, and that's we're gonna let you go in a sec, but that's always the sign of a great comic. It's we've mentioned him a couple times, like Tony V. Tony V killed at Fenway Park. Absolutely killed at Fenway Park. I get to open for him like 3 months later at a nice show in Lowell, and there was maybe 45, 50 people there. But then Joe and I saw him a couple weeks ago with another great, guy and a great headliner, a mutual friend of ours, Dave Radigan. It's kind of a dual headliner show, but it was a new comedy outlet. It was at this weird place. It was a Knights of Columbus wannabe. It wasn't a Knights of Columbus. It's a wannabe Knights of Columbus right by Joe's. It was almost, and it was in this industrial park. 20 people there, maybe, killed.
Yeah.
And the show that Tony did at Fenway Park that he did in front of the 50, 60, like it was the same level of just slaying, whether there was 3 people sitting there. So
yeah. I remember I did a residency at the Comedy Studio where you go up every night for 30 days and you do your 5 minutes. And they gave you the option that one day a week they did magic. That was Tuesdays, and they gave you the option if you want to do comedy as well with the magicians. But the club was devoted to magic at that time, just on Tuesday nights. And I said yes, and I went. And there's 4 people there. And the magicians, there's 4 people, 2 at each table, 2 couples. And I watched the magicians go up, and they'd work this table. And then they'd work this table, and then they just worked with what they had, and it was wonderful to see. And I tried the same thing, and it kind of worked. When I was like, "Well, they didn't like this, we'll go over here." It comes easier to work the room in like a weird sense. And once you get comfortable with it, we're like, okay. Once you get to like the level of like, this is pathetic, right? Okay, we all agree. Okay, now we're gonna have fun. Then it becomes fun at that level. And I bet with a person like Tony, and I can't imagine how you could not think this way, at least for a little while. It's like, I have no problem with whatever is happening now, because what I just did was something no one else gets to do.
Right.
I'm not scared.
Well, I just saw you posted a few weeks back. You did a living room show in front of a bunch of 25-year-olds. How did that show?
Happens a lot, man. That was great. Those shows they're great because a lot of times it's younger people. And they're down with whatever, and they just appreciate the I guess the mise en scene of the whole thing, But you'll find yourself doing a lot of it.
But as you're driving over there, are you like thinking, is this the urban legend where I'm going to wake up in a bathtub with a missing kidney, like walking in his? Oh yeah, Casey, we're going to do this living room show.
I think it was because of the Boston Comedy Festival. Someone told me like people will come out of the woodwork and ask you to do weird shit because like, and some kid, I got an email from some kid like the day after. He's like, hey, I run a sunflower seed festival in rural Ohio for my small town, and I'd love to have you do comedy. You got to be clean, which I'm like, I don't think you watched my set. He's saying that. But he's like, I have this weird opportunity. Do you want to come to rural Ohio? It's at noon. It's from noon to 1. It just sounded so like just a horrible thing. But I'm like, you get those kind of things. And then because you got to eat, you consider every one of them. You're like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. I do comedy for fun, and I'm blessed to do it for fun. I'm not like, what's my bottom line? I got to make whatever because of my wife. Right. I'm lucky like that, where it's just like, yeah, I will come to your apartment. Yeah. What am I doing here? I get that now where I'm like, I'll walk in and people are like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm just trying to move on with my life. Like, you know?
Well, other than the Sunflower Seed Festival, where do people follow you online? Where's the best place? Where are you most active?
I'm not really active online. I have videos on YouTube, but they're so poor quality that I don't think the jokes are good, but like I need better internet videos. I think before I know as weird as it sounds, but I'm gonna go really in Mackay on you. If you want to come see me at the club.
Where do people find your shows? Do you have a website or just?
I'll usually just post on Facebook. Like
Facebook is
the
big one.
Yeah,
okay,
Facebook, yeah, like here, and then I'm gonna put a record out. So if you like vinyl records, I'm going to be selling it out of the back of my van for the rest of my life.
But before you sell the record, we have to get people to the show September 20th. like that is the big show. Joe and I will definitely be there. That's so exciting for you. Oh, do we? We go to lots of shows together. It's like.
Have you seen Janet?
Yes, she's great.
Yeah, I love it. I got a real good get for her. I was like, hey, yeah. I go see just to see Janet. Yeah.
She what was the place that she was running? I never did it. She does a Wednesday kind of the Burren.
She doesn't anymore, but yeah, she ran it. Yeah.
I've had a lot of friends who've done that. Yeah, nothing but amazing things. So follow you on Facebook. We want to have you again. We're definitely having your wife back. We allow you to sit on it, but we'd also have you back, but not to talk comedy, but to talk our mutual love of collecting music.
Yeah, man, I'll do that. Yeah, we can do that with my wife and do like a thing too.
Well, you said you guys did music together.
We did. Yeah, we were in a band together.
What does she play?
She does all kinds of things. Now she's so good at like working with kids and teaching that she doesn't do it anymore. But it was kind of her gateway into Berkeley. Was like I was in a band and she would we'd write songs together. And she'd say she got a wonderful voice but she's more of like a Radiohead.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you know the difference between Tom and Johnny? She's more of a Johnny.
Okay.
She likes to fiddle with the things, even though she's got an amazing voice. Like, yeah, she's got an amazing voice, but it's like, it's so weird because it's not her main musical talent. She's got a brain for music. Like, I can hear music. Like, to me, I love Bob Dylan, right? I like words. She doesn't give a shit about that. She likes sounds. She's like Apex. She's like, do you hear that sound? I'm like, no, but that's her brain. And that's what she's good at. Yeah.
No, you guys seem to complement each other in so many. And also, she's just so fucking funny. Like
I was telling Joe last night. I mean, the woman I paid to play my wife did an excellent job. Really did.
So money well spent.
Yeah.
So Casey, co-champ of the 2024 Comedy Festival. Thank you for jumping on. Thank you for just cracking me up every time I see you. And I'm gonna let Joe finish with his thoughts.
I don't have any goddamn thoughts. What are you talking about? Have you heard me this entire time? What's up?
Sorry, I've been talking a lot, Joe, but all right. I want to show you my favorite game.
Oh, okay.
Have you played
Atari? Yes.
This.
I have not played Hive.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Well, it's a 2-player.
Yep.
But it's just a block game, and it's like I'm going to say it's like half chess.
Okay.
I don't know how to play chess. I don't understand multidimensional thinking like a lot of people do. This is a great like entry level to be like, okay, a two-player that you can play with like a partner or a. Alicia and I play it all the time, but it's one of those like easy entry point games that can get very like chess can get very complicated if you want to. Highly recommend it.
Hive.
And it's got Hive. It was one of the higher rated tabletops, but it's real durable. So these things are going to last past my human lifetime. That's all it is. These little blocks. Highly recommend this one for a two-player.
If I had any friends, I would definitely play tabletop games more. That's probably why I gravitate to video games, because I'm so much of a loner. Even though I have two basically grown children and a wife, they want nothing to do with me. Game-wise, I'm too competitive.
Are there any tabletops you can play by yourself?
I mean, there's a lot of games that I can pretend to. I mean, growing up as sort of like a solitary kid, I made a lot of two-player games. One-player game. All right, Jeff, your turn. Why, thank you, Joe.
Oh.
Yeah. I played a lot of Monopoly. I put the mono in Monopoly. It's the worst. But hey, Casey Crawford, you were a delight. I hope to see you again real soon. Thank you for doing our podcast. Jacques, don't forget.
You guys, people come up to me in the woods all the time and ask me if I work there. A high school teacher once gave me a piece of advice. She said, if you're not a student, then you need to leave. Seems like that was just yesterday. You guys, according to my Fitbit, I did about 3 miles worth of scissor kicks last night during my night terrors. The other day, an attractive young lady asked me if I wanted to go to a movie. And I was like, all right, what movie, what time? And she's like, you pick. And I'm like, you pick. And she's like, you pick. And I'm like, you pick. And she's like, you pick. And I'm like, you pick. And she's like, you pick. And I'm like, you pick. And she's like, you pick. And I'm like, you pick. And she's like, sir, there are other people waiting in line. The hardest part for me about going to a laser light show is trying to get all my cats to sit still. I recently built a time machine for one of my cats. Sent him back in time to try and kill Hitler's cat. Did some research afterwards. Found out Hitler never even had a cat, so mission accomplished, I guess. Calm down, you guys. I'm 38 years old, you guys. I am getting old. It's weird getting old. Like, I can watch an entire porno and the whole time just be thinking, I bet that pizza's getting cold. It's weird getting old. Like, I've been with my old lady for 14 years now. Yeah. 14 years is a long time to be with one person, you guys. It is. At this point, for us, having sex is a lot like trying to move a large piano into a small house. It's going to be a lot easier if I just pay 2 high school kids to do it.
See that Fitbit. Where is it? Well, that's Casey Crawford, everybody. Thank you, Casey.